Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com. And I have to admit, I'm in a slightly pessimistic frame of mind. My prediction of 2033 as the breakup of the United States may actually be an optimistic perspective. Welcome to the reprehensibles. Welcome to the unauthorized. Welcome to the VFM, to the Dread Ilk, and a warm welcome as always to the Bears. So, what's got me pessimistic? I can't say much about it. We're not really allowed to talk much about legal proceedings, arbitrations, et cetera, right? But the thing is that increasingly, and I've heard this from a lot of other people, is that nothing bloody works anymore. Nothing works. It's astonishing. Well, Ginger Monkey Bear works. He got off his lazy ass and fed the bear at unauthorized TV, so that's cool. But seriously, it seems like every day we run into more and more evidence that we're living in this clown world of incompetence. And, like I said, I can't, unfortunately, at this point in time, go into details on this. But what I can tell you, Frank Meadows says, sounds like the system is not working for the side of the just and righteous yet again. No, I'm not even talking about that. That's the amazing thing. To the extent that anything happened today, and some things did happen, but it was to our advantage. I'm not complaining. You need to understand, I'm not complaining. I am shocked. I am astonished at the level of incompetence that seems to be absolutely freaking everywhere. That's right, I am drinking espresso. I'm drinking espresso at 1:30 a.m. in the morning, my time, because that's how Dark Lords roll. But what I can say, and here's the thing that is interesting, is that I was feeling very frustrated. I was really irritated. And I thought, thanks, Charles. I'll get to the super chats in a bit, but thank you. I finally figured out how the legal systems and arbitration systems work. And it's clown world. It's really frustrating. But the way that you have to operate, we're sitting there going, this is very simple. The rules say this. The rules say this. Why is this even an issue? And what I realized, now this may not be entirely correct. I would not suggest taking any legal advice from a non-lawyer who doesn't even live in your country. But the way that I understand the system to work is that judges and arbitrators are like the oracle at Delphi. This is where you're wrong. This is where you're wrong, Dr. Jeep. I mean, there is an aspect to that. But what I'm saying is, even when it's, you're talking about the corrupt version of it. I'm not talking about the corrupt version. I'm talking about it. I'm talking about the way that it actually works. And the way that it actually works is that you've got this oracle sitting there. It's like the oracle at Delphi. It's just a big rock that sits there. And you can stand there and say, the rules say this. That guy over there, he's not allowed to do what he's doing. And the rock will just sit there. And it doesn't matter what the rules are. It doesn't matter what the rules say. The rock isn't going to do something. The rock isn't going to do anything until you approach it and ask it to answer you in the appropriate way. So what you have to do is you have to write down your request and turn it into the oracle. And then the oracle will make its interpretation. And it is only the interpretation that matters. So, but here's the thing, and this is where people get stuff wrong. They assume that the judge can simply make up whatever he wants, do whatever he wants. But and maybe that's true when you get to a high enough court or something. But when you're in a arbitration system, what you have to do is you have to point the oracle at the rules, at the laws, and say, what does this rule mean? And then what the oracle will do, as far as I can tell, the oracle will usually say exactly what the rule says. But the key thing is you have to ask the oracle. You have to ask the oracle for its interpretation. If you just keep standing there going, the rules say this, the oracle doesn't do anything. If you tell the oracle, I'm putting you on notice that that person did that, the oracle will do nothing. The oracle just sits there going, okay, I'm on notice. Do you have a question for me? James has it right. You have to appeal to the oracle. You have to ask the oracle whether that rule applies and what that rule means. And this is a fundamentally contorted way of thinking. Normal people don't think this way. The unsophisticated lawyers don't think this way either, but at least they understand that you have to say the magic words. And so, but this is what you need. It's such a fundamentally clown world way of thinking that it's actually kind of painful to have to deal with it. But it's really insane how that works. That's crazy. Josh Hopp got banned from Wikipedia for saying that I'm not a white supremacist. I'm not a white supremacist. I'm not a supremacist of any kind. I'm not even a height supremacist. Hell, for that matter, I'm not even an IQ supremacist. It's ridiculous, but c'est la vie. Anyhow, it was really eye-opening because, I was sitting there going, I'm a game designer. I'm supposed to be intelligent. What am I missing here? I must be missing something systematic here. And it was interesting because I was, to be frank, I was kind of bitching to somebody about it. and they kept saying, well, nothing anybody can do. And I'm thinking, there has to be something that somebody can do. And then I suddenly started realizing that it's like a computer, or it's like it's like the Oracle at Delphi. That's when it all really clicked for me, when I realized it's not the rule that matters. It's not the rule that is decisive, but the rules are not irrelevant. Those were the two things that I was having significant trouble balancing. And again, this is why I said we're in clown world now. Because you're looking at it going, the rules are there. They must matter somehow, but they don't seem to matter. So the question is, how are they applied? They're applied through interpretation. So then suddenly it all comes together. So it'll be interesting to see now whether we are able to penetrate and through all the nonsense, now that we may have a much better understanding of how the whole system works. So it'll be interesting to see. How can you advocate for meritocracy and not be an IQ supremacist? Very easily. IQ isn't everything. Wisdom trumps IQ. Experience can trump IQ. Knowledge can render IQ irrelevant. Or lack of knowledge can render IQ irrelevant. So you can't be a supremacist in that regard. It's too limited. Scott Adams said that facts don't matter anymore. Facts don't matter to too many people because we're in clown world. Could breakup bring net positive effects? Quite possibly, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be incredibly awful for everybody who goes through it. Let me hit a couple of the super chats here. Steppenwolf by Hess opinion. I think Steppenwolf is one of Hess's weakest books. The only reason it was popular was because of the sort of dream sequences that appealed to the drug-abusing 60s, as well as the, for its time, very racy scenes. I don't like it. It's a great name. It's a great title. But I didn't like the book very much. I vastly prefer practically everything from Peter Kamen-Zinn to Siddhartha, let alone Narcissus and Goldmund, and the Glass Bead Game. Static Void says, have $10. Thank you. Christopher Fry throws in $2. Thank you. Charles Carlson says, did my tax returns and wanted to share some of it with you. Please put this towards a nice bottle of wine. I hear you, Charles. I will be happy to do so. Big Bear's Hot Take says, hey Vox, completely off topic, but my wife is reading A Throne of Bones and wants to know how you pronounce Fjotra. It's pronounced Fjotra. Hope she enjoys it. The Dashing Rogue says, what is your advice for someone who works in IT and has to deal with H-1Bs? I can't understand a thing they say. What should I do? I hate my job. Advice. I would attempt to get them to put everything in writing. Just adapt a policy that any directions that you get need to be delivered to you in writing. Don't explain why either. Hey Vox, do you think public welfare is evil? Not intrinsically. If we do reach a genuine post-scarcity environment, then welfare is going to be the norm. It might be enervating. but I don't think enervation is necessarily evil. Rick Wall says, what can a typical powerlifting Delta do to develop better leadership skills? Got promoted to management this week. God bless. Well, congratulations, Rick. Glad to hear it. What I would recommend that you do is that you find a couple of alpha leaders that you consider to be effective, and that you watch what they do and you attempt to pattern your behaviors on them. Don't overdo it. The other thing that deltas don't like to do is they don't like to make decisions. That's going to be the biggest challenge for you. You need to make the decisions, and you need to not ask for buy-in from everybody else. As a delta, you're used to getting direction from others. You're used to not having to deal with the emotional pressure and the emotional and mental pressure of having to be the boss. You know, one thing I didn't understand when I was younger and I was, running a company is the way that these perfectly intelligent, very capable people who knew more about their jobs than I did would call me up and ask me questions about how to do things. And it was confusing because I'd be like, why on earth? They would say, do you think we should do X, or do you think we should do, do you think we should do X, which is the obvious thing to do and will probably work and won't cost us anything? Or should we do Y, which is a really bad idea, probably won't work, and is going to be expensive in any case? And I'd be listening to their questions thinking, why on earth are you asking me which of these two options would be better when you obviously know which the right one is? And what I suddenly realized one day, I had a bit of an epiphany, and I realized they're not asking me what to do. They're asking me to take the burden of the decision making off them, so that if it goes wrong for whatever reason, that they are not responsible. I am, because they asked me and I made the decision. And that's what your burden is as the leader. You make the decisions, and any eventual failure is going to be on you. Embrace that. Don't try to avoid it. As a delta, you're going to try to avoid it. You're going to try to pass the buck off by getting direction from your superiors, by getting buy-in from all your subordinates. You can't do that. Just make the decision. When they come to you and they ask you those stupid questions, should we do obvious option A or should we do stupid option B? Just take the opportunity to be decisive and say, we should definitely do option A. And they will go away happy. Not because they ever doubted that option A was what you were going to tell them to do, or that they knew they should do in the first place. They'll go away happy because you relieved them of the burden of the decision. Let's see here. Daniel says, planning on reading Martin Van Creveld. Objectively, how do you view his work? Serious, credible, insightful. Where do you rank him among historians? I would put him in the top rank of military historians. I don't think that he has any particular rank among non-military historians. You need to keep in mind that his concepts relating to the transformation of war are some of the most significant that anyone has come up with in terms of our conceptualization of how war takes place since since von Clausewitz. The number of people that you can say that about is probably on the order of 20 or less in all of human history, despite the fact that so many humans have been involved in war. You know, you've got Sun Tzu, you've got Machiavelli, you've got Clausewitz, you've got that that French expert on siegecraft. You know, you just don't have that many people who have actually come up with anything particularly significant when it comes to war. And yet, with his concept of post-Trinitarian warfare and the transformation of war, he has accomplished something that virtually no one ever has in history. And so you have to give the guy respect for that. What would be a series of events that would make you repatriate, Vox? I have no idea. I literally never think about it. Started listening to Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Great content so far. Thanks for the recommendation, Vox. You're quite welcome. It's great stuff. Let's see. Has Delta been covered in Voxiversity yet? No, we'll get to it soon. What is a good argument against gay marriage? The definitional one. Things are as they are defined. Marriage is not a relationship between two people. Marriage is not a state-recognized relationship. Marriage is a spiritual and sexual union between a man and a woman. So once it's defined that way, it's literally impossible for there to be gay marriage, animal marriage, marrying buildings or cars or so forth. You know, as is so often the case, the confusion entered in with state licensing and approval, because then the state went and redefined the institution in legal terms. But that doesn't change what the institution is. If the state unilaterally decides that henceforth a duck is a fish, that does not make a duck a fish. Would successive Republican presidents from now on delay the U.S. demise to any great degree? No, because Republicans, many Republicans are pro-immigration. The only issue that matters, the only issue that's mattered at all since 1965 is immigration. Do you think the U.S. has ever had a true nationalist president? Sure. I think a lot of the early presidents were genuine American nationalists. Now, some of them did have some civic nationalist instincts, but there's nothing wrong with them. They didn't understand that. Loris K. seems to have missed the point of the first question, or earlier question. You mentioned a historian of war that compared immigration with invasion. Can you provide his name and the article or where I can read it? Yes, of course. The name of the historian is Martin van Creveld. The name of the article is Immigration and War. And the book that you can read it in is There Will Be War, Volume 10. Try and Speak says, I've lived overseas a few times, but can't help but feel like a coward if I were to actually leave. Shouldn't one stay with their country even if it has major problems? Your thoughts, given you made the move. Sure. I left long before anyone believed that there was any issue with anything. I left more than 2 decades ago. I didn't even say anything about that because it simply sounded so crazy. And to be honest, it wasn't the only reason. We didn't know for sure that we were leaving for good. We didn't even make that decision for several years later. What we did understand is that given our age and our family circumstances, that if we were going to do anything, that was the time. So, why would you feel like a coward if you weren't running from anything and nobody was chasing you? You know, nobody cared. Nobody saw what I saw. Nobody believed. Even my wife didn't really believe me to the extent that I understand her thinking at the time. So, no, I mean, I'm quite happy with the decision we made. Things have gone well for us, and I think that if things do go the way that I tend to expect them to go, I think it would be nice to not be there. I know I'm not a coward, but there are more important things than people thinking that you're a coward. Think about Sun Tzu. Always choose your battles. And the thing that's kind of funny is the people that are saying, "You're a coward, you ran away." They're exactly the kind of people that were saying, "If you don't like it here, leave." So I don't care what people like that say. Their opinion means less to me than my dog's barking. There's a certain type of person that simply chooses to be negative no matter what. They're going to be negative. You might as well ignore them. Somebody said, are the Nephilim ever going to come back? I have heard an interesting and potentially crazy theory saying that they're actually in Antarctica, in the section of Antarctica that you're not allowed to enter. I mean, I think it's great that people want to defend their nation. I think it's great that people understand there really isn't anywhere to run. But the reality is that nobody's fighting. Nobody's doing anything yet. Maybe they will before it's too late, but it doesn't look like it. Emperor penguins are Nephilim. That would be funny. And that is also something that people need to keep in mind, is that as a Sigma, I'm not a group person. I'm not comfortable in groups. I'm, often not particularly welcome in groups. And so, being on my own is something that I'm extremely comfortable with. It's a little bit ironic that you've got someone like Jordan Peterson running around preaching this false gospel of a life without group identity that I actually lived. And part of why I'm so critical of his wicked and hapless philosophy is that I know it won't work for the vast majority of people. Even if you look at the superficial aspects of it, if you just look at the sovereign individual anti-group identity aspects of it, that will not work for just about anybody. And people say, "Oh, well, you're just saying that, you're just trying to, set yourself up as being special or whatever." I write 900-page books for fun. How much socializing do you think I do while I'm doing that? It was kind of funny. I don't remember who it was, but back when my dad was in the maelstrom of all his legal issues, somebody had said something about, what if you end up going to jail too? And my wife said, "Let's see. He'll sit in one room and not talk to anyone and read all day. That's how he lives now." it's some of us just, you know, it's just the thing that you need to, need to understand it, but it might be helpful to understand that it's not about some sort of romantic thing. It's not about some sort of trying to create a false picture thing. It's the result of psychological damage when you're very young. I mean, I like the results, but as Space Bunny has pointed out to me, your total indifference to what people think isn't natural, and it's not good. And I said, well, I find it very useful. And she said, well, that's great that you've, found a way to make use of it, but that doesn't make it a good thing. If you're missing a finger and that allows you to throw a better curveball, I mean, great, you can throw a better curveball, but it still makes it tough to pick up a fork or do all kinds of other normal human activities. And so, that's why I never recommend that people follow my path, because I don't think, even if it's worked out well for me, that doesn't mean that it's going to work out well for anybody else. It could have been a complete disaster if I'd married a different woman. So, I mean, a point on a curve says, aren't we all psychologically damaged when we were young? Well, yeah, that's part of what shapes us and part of what sets us up for our roles in the social hierarchy and so forth. We all bear the scars and the shapings of our formative years. That's how humans develop. And so, it's that's why I think it's so ridiculous when people are trying to claim that they're things that they are not, because it's not going to change anything. You can call yourself, a Grand Puyan or a Stone Cold Delta or whatever you want. It's not going to change who you are. The map isn't the territory. It's the territory that matters. So, Chantel Ford says, does Space Bunny like solitude as well? How else could she be happily married to me? Our friends have, likened us in the past to two lone wolves running in parallel. There was a time, it was kind of funny. I don't think I've ever completely understood another individual quite as much as the time when we had a couple social events planned and we got an invitation in the mail. We were standing outside at the mailbox, and Space Bunny took out the mail and opened one up, and it was an invitation to a nice little party or something. And she looks at me and says, "We have too many friends. We have to move." And we did 6 months later. So, see, this is the question that shows how people miss the point. Do gammas also tend to be lonely and solitary? Gammas are lonely, but they're not solitary. I'm solitary. I'm not lonely. not in the slightest. And so, I mean, that's what people don't understand. If you have ever found yourself thinking that you're lonely or craving human company and that kind of stuff, you're not a loner. Loners don't do that ever. You know, what loners do is disappear because there's people around. You know, and that's what I find a little bit frustrating. The way that gammas constantly confuse their anger at their rejection from the hierarchy with a desire to be away from people. They don't want to be away from people. They want people to stop hurting their feelings. There's a difference. And so, I mean, think about this. If gammas are solitary, then why, when they are rejected, whether it's by a woman or a group, do they explode with anger? That's not what you do if you crave solitude. It's the exact opposite. You know, people have a tendency to confuse the dislike for the effects of being around people given their low social status with not liking people. I mean, all you got to do is see how these people like open up like flowers if somebody's nice to them, if somebody praises them. You know somebody is much more solitary if you praise them and they like don't like it, get uncomfortable, and walk away from you. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chats here. Do you think New Zealand will actually be safe when the war comes to the West? No, because I think it's too close to being dominated by China. Principled Bear here, watch daily. Feeding the Bear on unauthorized. Thank you. Just want to let you know, you help a lot with putting my thoughts to words. I'm glad to hear it. The Dashing Rogue, your take on Freemasonry and Manly P. Hall. I don't know who Manly P. Hall is, so I don't have any take on him. Freemasonry strikes me as one of those typical organizations where it's all harmless enough at the bottom levels, but as you progress higher, you get more and more opportunities to indicate that you're willing to sell your soul. That's just my impression. I don't actually know, but that's my impression. Also, I don't believe that whole 33rd degree Mason thing where they talk about that as if it's like a super high rank. I'd be more inclined to take it seriously if you would hear about people being a 26th degree Mason or a 18th degree Mason. The fact that people always seem to leap right to 33rd tends to indicate that it's just some sort of honorary position. Frank Underwood asks, how does the degree of how much people are ruled by their fear of failure correlate to their socio-sexual ranking alpha through gamma? Alphas are the least afraid of failure. Gammas are the most. I mean, it's very easy. You can almost trace, you can almost surmise a man's socio-sexual rank just by knowing what his level of fear of failure is. alphas are heavy risk takers. You know, they actually enjoy taking risks. They get off on it. Gammas are the complete opposite. Let's see how we doing for time here. Okay. Dreddy Bear's got a good point. Why are you guys so worried about your social sexual hierarchy rank? It's a tool to use when dealing with others, not a way to understand yourself. Read the Bible for the latter. Well, I think you can use it to understand yourself a bit, but again, it's not the main focus. It's just not the main focus. Disappointment is a heavy weight on a soul. Vox, this gamma type you speak of sounds like the cause of that burden. I don't think that's true. I think gamma is more the result of important male figures expressing consistent disappointment in them. That's where they learn their terror of failure. I don't think most children are naturally afraid of failure. Everything we learn when we're little kids is we try to do something we can't, and we try it again and again until we succeed. But at some point in time, the gamma's pattern gets messed up, and he starts to become afraid of trying to do things. I mean, I always know that somebody's a gamma when they're trying to get on my case because, the war mouse failed, or, your YouTube channel only has 25,000 subscribers. That's so embarrassing. I'm like, I don't even understand how that would be embarrassing. I mean, it's so funny the way people don't realize what they communicate about themselves when they try to mock others. Frosty the Bear says, you have great ability in congealing many of the random epiphanies I have had into a cogent framework. Midwit here if you can't tell. What's interesting is that once you understand the socio-sexual hierarchy, you see it everywhere, all over the place. I mean, let me read you this passage that I ran across when I was reading 1Q84 again. And why am I reading it again? I have no idea. I just picked it up. Okay, check this out. Since he was a boy, Ushikawa had kept to himself. When he came home from school, he had shut himself in his room and gotten lost in books. He had no friends other than his dog, so he never had the chance to talk with someone about what he had learned or debate anyone. Still, he was convinced that he was a clear, eloquent, logical thinker, and he patiently honed these abilities all by himself. For instance, he would propose an idea for discussion and debate it, taking both sides. He would passionately argue in support of the proposition, then argue just as vigorously against it. He could identify equally with either of the two positions and was completely and sincerely absorbed by whatever position he happened to be supporting at the moment. Let's see. If he felt like it, he knew he could shoot down anybody in an argument, not just his siblings or classmates, but his teachers and parents as well. But he didn't want to attract any kind of attention if he could avoid it, so he kept this ability hidden. I mean, that's not just a flawless, that's a deep explanation of a gamma. The thing that's really remarkable to me is the way that he talks about how if he felt like it, he knew he could shoot down anybody in an argument. I mean, this tends to indicate that, if Murakami doesn't have some gamma behaviors himself, some gamma strain himself, then he is close. He was close to someone who is a gamma, because he understands not just the pattern of behavior. He understands the underlying thought processes as well. And that's very impressive. And so the reason, what got me thinking about that was Frosty the Bear talked about the random epiphanies. You see these behaviors being described in books going back to antiquity. Characters going back to antiquity. It's really remarkable. But it makes sense because these are human patterns of behavior and they're not going to change significantly over time. SoCal Bear throws in $1. Thank you. Ben Darling says, gammas are more likely to be SJWs, but are alphas more likely to want small government with an emphasis on self-sufficiency? Yes. I mean, you've even seen the fact that men who lift weights are more likely to be politically conservative, while men who are long-distance runners tend to be much more liberal. Do omegas want government to do everything for them? No, it is too simplistic. I don't really know. I mean, omegas quite often just want to. They kind of be of two types. They're kind of two types. One just wants to not be persecuted, and the other type wants to burn the world to ashes. Hey Vox, read about your hierarchy and could see similarities in reality. How could a delta move towards Alpha Bravo? Is there a graduating delta? We haven't written one yet, but I think that the question by the who was it? The question from Rick Wall was an excellent one, and the way that a delta can start elevating his perceived social status is to become a lieutenant to an alpha, to become an alpha's right-hand man and start relieving some of the burden of leadership that is on the alpha. Roland says quality of followers matters not. Is there... Oh, I think, quantity of followers matters not. Is there quality that truly matters? Yes, we follow the philosophy of Gideon here. This is close. MW says sigmas are alphas who don't want to play in the hierarchy. That's not quite right. Sigmas are mutant alphas who are unable to play in the hierarchy. Taffy is right. I was just talking about this with a friend of mine tonight. I think you've said before that it surprises you that so many people are interested in watching you sit and talk. Yeah, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why I resisted doing Periscope in the first place. It's like, why would I do that? And why would anyone pay attention? And then, it became clear that people like to watch Mike Cernovich. They like to watch Scott Adams. I respect both those guys, but I don't think that I have considerably less to offer intellectually than either of them. So I thought, well, okay, maybe it does make sense. And what I've realized now is that this is, for some people, for a lot of people, a substitute for reading, as well as a substitute for just watching brain dead television. It's kind of in between. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. SoCal Bear says, as a poker player, I classify people in a similar way to gamma, alpha, etc. Gammas are mortally afraid of risk. Alphas love it both to their success and their detriment. That's absolutely correct. Is Scott Adams gamma or has he graduated to delta? I don't know. I've honestly never given... He's not a gamma anymore. I mean, he's very successful. He's got a young, pretty girlfriend and all that sort of thing. He's got lots and lots of followers. Again, you need to distinguish between the status and the pattern of behavior. So, you know, just because you elevate your status for one reason or another doesn't mean that your fundamental patterns of behavior are going to change. And, you know, I think that we see Scott Adams' gamma side coming out with his lack of honesty. David Smith says, what does this have to do with perspective, titles, abilities? What is the end point to move forward and learn? David, I suggest that you watch the video on the socio-sexual hierarchy on Unauthorized TV or on the Voxiversity channel, and then watch the alpha and gamma videos. You will understand why it's important. It's not about the titles. The titles, the names don't matter. The patterns of behavior, understanding the patterns of behavior, and even better, the underlying thought processes, is incredibly useful because it allows you to not only understand, but anticipate and predict the behavior of others. Duralex Sedlex says, 2 cents on Delta going Bravo. Also embrace fail fast and fail often. Whenever you make the decision to send the other deltas up to do the thing that you decide to do, think up a contingency just in case. You know, the other thing that you want to do is that you need to understand that you're no longer going up the hill. I think that one thing a delta is going to struggle with, you know, the delta is going to be like the captain on Star Trek. I mean, he's, you know, obviously Kirk is not a delta, but where there is a similarity, there's the way that he's the captain. He should never get off the ship. Why would he ever get off the ship? That's not his job. You know, deltas have this tendency to inappropriately stick themselves into lower status jobs, you know, to get their hands dirty and stuff when they shouldn't be. They should be sitting back, making the decisions and giving instructions to others. Durlex Sedlex says, hey, Bravo man, plan A didn't work. Response, crap. Here's what we do instead. Get on it. Yeah, it was kind of funny. Yeah, reload your band. I've said it before. Apparently, I'll have to say it again. If you suggest that I have Eric Dubé on here, or if you start trying to pitch Flat Earth on here, you'll be banned. I've seen you guys try to interfere with Owen's channel. You're not going to interfere with mine. So, Brandon Brophy says deltas are the best. Deltas are awesome. Deltas are great. I rely heavily on deltas, and I make sure they know how much I appreciate them. You know, delta competence is what makes civilization possible. So, you know, if you're a delta, don't ever be ashamed of that. Be proud of it. You know, it would be nice if women had a greater appreciation for deltas, if they were more naturally attracted to them. You know, but I'm sure that short guys think it would be great if women were more attracted to short guys than tall guys. I mean, you know, we have to live in the reality we're in. But that doesn't mean that you need to be in the least bit apologetic for what you are, or for your strengths. Do you think the Assange extradition and the Mueller probe winding up are related? We talked about that last night. I don't know, but the timing is a little bit suspicious. Can you give a literary example of a delta who needs to step back and make an informed decisions? Not necessarily, but I mean, if you want to know what delta fiction is, just read, read thrillers, especially like 80s era thrillers. You know, the Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy, Robert Ludlum, that kind of stuff. That's what the world looks like from the perspective of the Delta. He's never a higher up. He's a guy doing his job. He doesn't necessarily understand what's going on. He's just trying to do his job the best he can. Are all great military generals alpha? Most likely. I don't remember enough of reading those Dark Elf books. I think I read one. I didn't like it very much. I don't think alphas tend to write fiction, to be honest. Gammas write a lot of fantasy. Although, actually, a good example of Delta fiction is Lord of the Rings. Do Bravos tend to get along with others because they genuinely like people, while Gammas make nice because they're afraid to express their resentment for others? Yes. Seriously, I think the best rank overall, probably the best and happiest rank is probably Bravo. They're attractive to women. All the guys like them. They're respected by everyone. They tend to have special positions within their immediate hierarchies. About the only thing that they have to really put up with is occasionally having to deal with their alpha, interfering with their wives and or girlfriends. That's one of the big problems that can ruin a relationship between an alpha and a Bravo, is that the alpha can't keep himself under control and either hits on or has a relationship with the Bravo's wife or girlfriend. Name the least alpha president in the last 100 years. Let me see. Clinton, no. Carter. Carter's my first thought. Not Nixon, not Kennedy. Oh. Sorry about that. I've been waiting for that, but we're almost at our hour. So I'm going to go with Carter. Harry Truman is the other possibility. Either Carter or Harry Truman. Random question. What's a good literary example that demonstrates nationalism? Let me deal with that one tomorrow. I need to think about it. Phil B throws in 5 Canadian. Thank you. So, Sauce and Bear says, Vox, please say hello to Future Boo for me. It's an inside joke. I hope you feel better. I feel fine. Anyhow, hello, Future Boo. I hope this finds you well, or will find you well in the future. All right. Well, as you can tell, we've got SJWs to hunt. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I look forward to seeing you the next time. I'm Vox Day. This is the Darkstream.